There are World War II rifles that sit comfortably in museums and private collections, admired for their engineering and history. Then there are rifles that seem to carry a different weight entirely. These are the weapons that governments locked away, destroyed, or banned from civilian hands not because they failed, but because they crossed lines that later generations decided should never be crossed again. When collectors talk about cursed rifles, they are not being poetic. These guns are tied to war crimes, political terror, or technical features that made them unacceptable long after the war ended. The Volkssturmgewehr embodied desperation taken to an extreme. Late in the war, Germany produced rifles so crude that even the Wehrmacht hesitated to issue them. The Volkssturmgewehr was stamped steel, rough welded, and barely finished. Accuracy was poor, safety mechanisms were minimal, and catastrophic failures were common. These rifles were issued to elderly men and teenagers with almost no training. Many surviving examples were deliberately destroyed after the war, and intact originals are heavily restricted in some countries because they symbolize forced civilian militarization under a totalitarian regime rather than conventional military service. The Arisaka rifles tied to biological warfare research remain taboo. Most Japanese Arisaka rifles are legal collector pieces today, but a small number are associated with units connected to biological warfare programs in occupied China. Rifles recovered from those facilities were often destroyed rather than catalogued. In some jurisdictions, weapons directly linked to crimes against humanity are treated as prohibited artifacts regardless of their mechanical nature. The rifle itself is not unique, but its documented use is what makes ownership impossible. The Soviet AVS-36 became a lesson in why select fire rifles terrified lawmakers. The AVS-36 was one of the earliest attempts at a fully automatic battle rifle. It was uncontrollable, mechanically fragile, and prone to accidental discharge. Soviet troops disliked it, but its existence influenced post-war firearms legislation worldwide. Fully automatic shoulder-fired rifles became heavily restricted or outright banned for civilians. Original AVS-36 rifles are rarely transferable, and often classified as prohibited weapons, even in countries with otherwise permissive gun laws. The FG-42 blurred the line between rifle and machine gun just a bit too effectively. Germany's FG-42 was designed for paratroopers and, it combined features of a rifle, an automatic weapon, and even a sniper platform. It was honestly revolutionary and terrifyingly effective. Its select fire capability, high rate of fire, and armor-piercing ammunition made it a nightmare for post-war regulators. Authentic FG-42s are among the most restricted firearms on Earth, often locked away in military collections only. And where they do exist privately, ownership is tightly controlled, licensed, and sometimes, frozen entirely. The Type 100 paratrooper rifle became illegal because it was designed to disappear. The Japanese Type 100 paratrooper rifle could be broken down into compact sections for airborne troops. That feature alone, honestly, raised red flags decades later. Firearms designed for concealment or rapid assembly are frequently restricted under modern law. The rifle's ability to be hidden and reassembled quickly placed it in the same category as covert weapons. As a result, original functioning examples are illegal to own in many countries regardless of historical value. The Mosin Nagant sniper rifles tied to political executions were erased. While standard Mosin Nagant rifles are common, certain sniper variants linked to NKVD execution units were quietly removed from circulation. These rifles were not battlefield weapons in the usual sense. They were tools of internal terror. Documented examples were often destroyed or sealed in state archives. In places where provenance matters legally, weapons tied to political executions are classified as prohibited artifacts rather than firearms. The Delisle carbine crossed a legal line that still exists today. The British Delisle carbine was purpose-built for assassination, integrally suppressed, firing subsonic ammunition, and nearly silent. It was one of the most effective covert rifles ever created. Modern firearms law draws a hard line around suppressed weapons, especially those designed that way from the start. Original Delisle carbines are effectively unobtainable for civilians and illegal in most countries due to their design intent, not just their mechanics. What unites these rifles is not caliber or country, but purpose. They were designed for chaos, secrecy, terror, or control. After the war, nations tried to draw boundaries around what civilian ownership should look like, and these weapons fell on the wrong side of that line. They remind us that technology does not exist in a vacuum. Context matters, history matters. Sometimes the story attached to a weapon is more dangerous than the weapon itself. If you want more deep dives into the strange, unsettling corners of military history that museums rarely explain, subscribe to the channel, share this with a fellow collector or historian, and keep digging into the stories that refuse to stay buried.